Osborne Computer. Osborne Computer invented the portable computer and then talked itself to death. The Osborne one, launched in 1981 at $1,795, was the first commercially successful portable machine, a 24-pound suitcase of a computer that sold tens of thousands of units and made founder Adam Osborne one of the most famous names in the young industry. Then in 1983, Osborne made an announcement he could never take back. He publicly revealed the company's next-generation machines while they were still months from being ready, expecting the hype to build excitement. Instead, customers and dealers did the obvious thing, which was to stop buying the current model and wait for the better one. Orders collapsed almost overnight while warehouses sat full of computers nobody wanted anymore, and with no revenue coming in, the company ran out of cash before the new machines could ship. Osborne Computer declared bankruptcy in September 1983, barely 2 years after its triumph. Historians still argue about how much other factors contributed, including fierce new competitors, but the lesson was so painful that it earned a permanent name. To this day, announcing a future product so early that it kills sales of your current one is known in business as the Osborne effect, a cautionary tale taught to every product manager who has ever been tempted to brag too soon. Ratner's. Ratner's was destroyed by a single joke told by its own chief executive. Gerald Ratner had built his family's jewelry business into a retail empire with around 2,000 shops, dominating the British high street by selling affordable jewelry to ordinary people, and by 1991 the company was worth hundreds of millions of pounds. That April, Ratner stood up to give a speech at a major business gathering at the Royal Albert Hall and decided to be funny. He told the audience that one of his store's sherry decanter sets sold so cheaply because it was, in his words, total crap, and added that some of his earrings cost less than a prawn sandwich but probably would not last as long. The room laughed. The newspapers did not. The quotes ran on front pages across Britain, and customers who had happily bought his jewelry suddenly felt publicly insulted for owning it. Shoppers abandoned the stores in droves. Roughly 500 million pounds of company value evaporated, and Ratner himself was pushed out the following year. The company was so contaminated that it renamed itself Signet in 1993 to escape the association. In Britain, executives destroying their own company with careless words is still called doing a Ratner. Digg. Digg was one of the most influential sites on the internet, and one redesign killed it in a matter of weeks. Through the mid-2000s, Digg was where the web decided what mattered, with millions of users voting stories up or down and a front page powerful enough to crash smaller websites with traffic. Google reportedly came close to buying the company for around $200 million in 2008. Then, on August 25, 2010, the company under founder Kevin Rose, the site's public face, launched a ground-up redesign called Version 4. The new site removed beloved features including the bury button that let users vote down weak stories, tilted the front page toward content from big publishers instead of the community, and on top of everything, launched riddled with bugs and outages. The users revolted instantly, and in one of the internet's great acts of protest, they flooded Digg's own front page with links to Reddit, their new home, before leaving forever. Traffic fell off a cliff and never came back. By 2012, the site that had once been valued north of $160 million was broken up and sold in pieces, with the core product going to a small firm for a reported $500,000, roughly the price of a house, for what had been one of the web's crown jewels. Circuit City. Circuit City decided its most experienced employees were too expensive, and the decision killed the company inside 2 years. In March 2007, the electronics retailer was struggling against Best Buy and Walmart, and Chief Executive Philip Schoonover approved a plan with brutal logic. The company fired about 3,400 of its highest-paid store salespeople in a single sweep, not for poor performance, but explicitly because they earned above the pay range and replaced them with cheaper new hires. The problem was that the highest-paid salespeople were the highest-paid precisely because they were the best, the veterans who understood home theater setups and could guide a confused customer through a major purchase. Circuit City gutted its own expertise at the exact moment the flat-screen television boom made knowledgeable service the entire reason to visit a store instead of buying online. Customers walked into stores where nobody could answer their questions, and they walked out to Best Buy. Morale collapsed. Sales followed, and the timing could not have been worse, because the financial crisis arrived just as the company weakened. Circuit City filed for bankruptcy in November 2008 and liquidated completely months later, erasing around 34,000 jobs, all downstream of a memo that treated experience as a cost instead of an asset. Borders. Borders looked at the internet and decided to hand the whole thing to its most dangerous competitor. In 2001, the bookstore chain was one of the two giants of American book retail, with hundreds of superstores where people spent entire afternoons. Rather than build serious online operations of its own, The company under Chief Executive Greg Josephowitz signed a deal that still amazes business professors, outsourcing its entire e-commerce business to Amazon so that customers who typed in Borders' web address were actually shopping on a site run by Amazon, with Amazon handling the sales and learning everything about Borders' customers in the process. The arrangement lasted 7 years, exactly the period when online book buying went from novelty to normal, and when Borders finally took back its website in 2008, it had missed the entire digital transition. The company had also doubled down on selling CDs and DVDs just as music and movies went digital, compounding the misjudgment. Crushed by debt, ebooks, and the rival it had personally trained with its own customer data, Borders filed for bankruptcy in February 2011 and liquidated that year, closing every store and putting more than 10,000 people out of work while Amazon became the everything store. JCPenney. JCPenney hired a retail genius, and his first big decision drove away half the customer base. In late 2011, the century-old department store recruited Ron Johnson, the celebrated architect of Apple's retail stores, as chief executive, and Wall Street cheered. Johnson immediately eliminated the thing Penney's customers loved most. Believing constant discounts were dishonest, he killed the coupons and the hundreds of yearly sales events, replacing them with what he called fair and square everyday pricing, where items simply cost a reasonable amount all the time. The math was arguably honest, but the psychology was catastrophic, because Penney's core shoppers were bargain hunters who lived for the thrill of clipping a coupon and beating the sticker price. Told there would be no more games, they did not feel respected. They felt robbed of the fun, and they simply stopped coming. In a single year, revenue collapsed by roughly 25%, a loss of more than $4 billion in sales, one of the fastest declines a major retailer has ever inflicted on itself. Johnson was fired after just 17 months. The coupons came rushing back, but the shoppers never fully did. The weakened company limped on for years before finally filing for bankruptcy in 2020. MoviePass. MoviePass made a pricing decision so generous that every new customer brought the company closer to death. The subscription service had existed quietly for years, letting members see movies in theaters for a monthly fee of around $40 to $50, until August 2017, when new leadership under Mitch Lowe dropped the price to $9.95 a month for a movie every single day. A single ticket in many American cities already cost more than that, meaning anyone who went twice a month was being subsidized, and film lovers understood immediately that this was free money. Subscriptions exploded from tens of thousands to more than 3 million, and the company celebrated its growth while paying theaters full price for nearly every ticket its members used. The more people loved the product, the faster the money burned, with losses eventually running tens of millions of dollars a month. Desperate patches followed, including surge pricing, blocked blockbusters, and password crackdowns, each one enraging subscribers who had signed up for unlimited movies. The service sputtered out in 2019. The parent company collapsed into bankruptcy, and regulators later charged executives over misleading claims. MoviePass proved that customers will happily accept a deal that is too good to be true all the way to the funeral. Toys R Us. Toys R Us handed its online future to Amazon and never built one of its own. In 2000, the toy giant was struggling to run a website during the chaotic early days of e-commerce. So under chief executive John Eyler, it signed what looked like a smart deal, a 10-year agreement making Toys R Us the exclusive toy seller on Amazon, paying tens of millions a year for the privilege while Amazon ran all the technology. For a while it worked, but the exclusivity turned out to be an illusion, because Amazon began allowing other merchants to sell toys on its platform anyway. Toys R Us sued in 2004 and eventually won damages, but winning the lawsuit missed the point, since the company had spent the crucial years of internet growth without developing real e-commerce muscles of its own, leaving it dependent and digitally stunted just as parents moved their shopping online. A 2005 leverage buyout then loaded the company with more than $5 billion of debt, and the interest payments consumed the money that could have funded a comeback. Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy in September 2017 and liquidated its American stores the following year, ending more than 30,000 jobs in a brand that had defined childhood for generations. Better.com. Better.com became world famous in the worst way possible in a 3-minute video call. The online mortgage company was one of the pandemic era's hottest startups, riding the home buying boom to a valuation of around $7 billion, with plans to go public. Then, on December 1st, 2021, Chief Executive Vishal Garg summoned about 900 employees, roughly 9% of the workforce, to a Zoom meeting and informed them flatly that if they were on the call, they were part of the unfortunate group being terminated, effective immediately. Someone recorded it, and by the next morning the clip had circled the planet, becoming the defining symbol of cold corporate behavior in the remote work age. Reports of other abrasive messages from Garg surfaced. He took a brief leave and then returned to the top job weeks later, which told talented employees everything they needed to know about staying. The deeper business was collapsing too, as rising mortgage rates gutted the refinancing boom the company was built on, and hundreds of millions in losses piled up through wave after wave of further layoffs. When better finally reached the stock market in August 2023, investors delivered the verdict, sending the shares down roughly 93% on the very first day. Lehman Brothers died holding out for a better price. By 2008, the 158-year-old investment bank was drowning in losses from mortgage investments, and Chief Executive Dick, a famously combative leader nicknamed the Gorilla, spent months fielding potential lifelines. Investors approached with offers to inject capital, and talks ran with buyers, including Korea Development Bank, but accounts from that period described the same pattern again and again, with Fold convinced that Lehman was worth far more than anyone was willing to pay, negotiating as if he held the strong hand while the firm bled beneath him. Deal after deal slipped away over price and terms. By the second weekend of September 2008, the government refused a bailout. Last-minute rescue talks with Barclays and Bank of America collapsed, and there was nothing left to negotiate with. On September 15, 2008, Lehman filed the largest bankruptcy in American history, with over $600 billion in assets, an event that turned a financial crisis into a global panic overnight, vaporized retirement savings across the world, and put around 25,000 employees out of work. Companies had died from bad products and bad luck before, but Lehman became the ultimate case of a company destroyed by the refusal to accept what it was actually worth.